I just got done watching Christopher Nolan's brand new movie, Oppenheimer, a film that I have been highly anticipating but also very nervous about, and I say that as someone who loves Christopher Nolan. You can call me a fanboy of his because a lot of his films I think are masterpieces, 10 out of 10s, near perfect films, and Oppenheimer I was a little bit nervous. Was he going to go too big in spectacle? Was he going to give that depth to Robert Oppenheimer? He does, because this is his crowning achievement as a director, as well as, yes, Oppenheimer is a masterpiece. It's a perfected film. It's a perfected film experience. It's a cinematic masterpiece. It's all those words and more that you can lay out together, and it's truly one of the best theater experiences I have ever had. Now, full disclosure as well, I did get to view this in IMAX 70mm. That was my press screening. The theater in Arizona that I attended is one of the few theaters in the world to be able to show this in IMAX, and again, 70mm film print. And that is the way to see it. If you have a theater near you playing it in that film print, you should absolutely go see it. If you just can see it in IMAX, you absolutely should. And some of you might be wondering, is it even worth that for admission? It's a lot of talkie-talkie and stuff like that. Yes, because it makes you remember old school classic Hollywood films. And I think that's one thing that I really love about this movie is how Christopher Nolan developed a movie that in a lot of ways does feel like an old school classic Hollywood movie that we would have seen in the 50s or the 60s, and we just don't get movies like this nowadays. And I think it's fair to say that Christopher Nolan is top 4 directors of all time after watching this movie. Now, I do have to say that this video was recorded during the 2023 WGA and SAG strikes. Without the labor of the writers and actors currently on strike, this movie being covered here wouldn't exist. I do have a link down below to where you can go support the SAG and, of course, WGA, and they all deserve living wages. I have to give a full disclosure on that because, you know, there's a lot of strikes going on right now, and again, without this, like, if you didn't have the actors in this film or the writers that had been a part of it, there could be a lot of issues and this film would have never came to suffice. Alongside that, I am definitely very excited to hear your guys' thoughts on this movie. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Are you guys doing Barbenheimer this week? I've already seen Barbie. If you're watching this video, my Barbie review is now up. Definitely go check it out. I will be having a Christopher Nolan ranking the week after this one, so around Monday or Tuesday next week, just because I'm going to San Diego Comic-Con, so do look forward to that. I'm so excited to give you guys my ranking for that. With that said, let's dive into my pros. And Oppenheimer, I mean, I don't even know where to start at this. I'm pretty speechless. I came right home, came through those doors over there that you cannot see, and just sat here for a good 10-15 minutes not really knowing what first words I should say, because I honestly left the theater pretty speechless and my mind blown because of what Nolan was able to craft here. I think what I want to start with talking first is about the performances, because they are very much front and center, specifically Cillian Murphy, who I have been such a massive fan of every time he's ever populated in something, whether it's 28 Days Later or even, of course, Peaky Blinders, which is one of the biggest shows that he's known for. He is one of those actors that just shows up in certain projects and instantly raises the bar. And specifically, a lot of Nolan projects he's been a part of, whether it's Inception, some of The Dark Knight, he played the Scarecrow. He's just been that guy that's always been Nolan's right-hand man. And the fact that he finally gets to be the leading man in a big blockbuster drama like this, you just see it. And for me, he is unrecognizable in here. Person in history that I learned a lot about throughout school. And the fact that Murphy here was able to just craft and become Oppenheimer in every sort of way, it really made me speechless. And I found that his performance was about every single thing that I could have ever wanted from this. And it really made my jaw drop multiple times. And I had to keep reminding myself that that's Cillian Murphy. That's not actually Oppenheimer. That's Cillian Murphy. Really became Robert J. Oppenheimer, and it really blew my mind away by how good he was in here. And if the Oscars were tomorrow, he should absolutely win. He is my best actor choice right now, alongside Robert Downey Jr., who I was a little bit nervous when he got announced that he was going to be in here, because lately I've just seen him be in the same roles. He always plays the Tony Stark kind of persona. And I know Robert Downey Jr. is an amazing actor, but I don't feel like we've personally seen it in the last few years. He should win Best Supporting Actor. It's going to take we still got 6 months, but it's going to be a hard race to beat him. I would even go as far as say this might be my favorite performance from him. And I was also very hesitant to see how his role was going to be playing out in here. And specifically, we'll talk about the timeline jumps and how Christopher Nolan actually plays around with the writing and all sorts of things like that. But Downey is, again, another word, unrecognizable, like I mentioned about Murphy, and it was phenomenal to see what Downey Jr. was able to do in here. Emily Blunt is spectacular. Matt Damon is Matt Damon. You know you're going to like him in here. The cast in here is so big. I'm like literally looking at the list, and like every single person does an amazing job in here. Those two though that I mentioned, Murphy, Downey, they're the crowning actors of this entire film they really took me by storm. Like I said at the top, this is Nolan's crowning achievement. This is the film that I think, besides Inception, will be the film that everyone studies from him. And I think this is the type of movie that film students should study themselves. And it'll be a film that will be engraved into many people's heads, whether it's in history classes who learn about Robert Oppenheimer, or just in general what Nolan decided to do with the film. Because while this is, about the development of the atomic bomb, and that's what a lot of the marketing has been about, it really is about Robert J. Oppenheimer. That's who it is. It's about him, specifically. His entire life, almost. His entire build up to building the bomb and the epilogue of that. And for about 90% of this movie, you are in his shoes. What is he feeling? How is he feeling? What is he going through? What tensity or sweat-induced anxiety moments could he be possibly having? Again, it's Nolan's vision that I just constantly keep going back and forth on. And some of the things that he decides to frame this movie is, Nolan is very much a player on time. We've seen that in Inception, Tenet, Interstellar, whatever movie you want to say it is, he is fascinated with time. And something that he did in Dunkirk was he had 3 different stories playing out at once, and then at one point they finally all cross. And Oppenheimer kind of has the same thing. There's like 3 different storylines going all at once. But the way that the first act really touches on the early lives of Oppenheimer, getting to understand who is this guy that we are going to spend 3 hours with, getting to see that he is a womanizer, that he's not really the most class act guy out there, but he is an absolute genius, seeing how this guy works, and that he's not just a nerdy, weird guy that knows science. No, there's a lot more to Oppenheimer than you would expect. Jumping into the second act, which really touches on to the building of the atomic bomb. And the third act is very much the epilogue to everything that Oppenheimer just went through. Which, speaking of that third act, that is actually where I was a little bit worried that we were going to start to lose some steam. And for a 3-hour movie, you're kind of worried. Are you going to feel that 3 hours? Walking out, I personally did not feel the 3 hours. It did feel pretty seamless through all the way out. By the time when I checked the time, I was like, wow, we're already halfway through the movie, and it's only felt like maybe 45 minutes to an hour. It just flies by because the exquisite dialogue and also just the rapid paced editing in here, which I actually think is a big part of how this film really works, is that on a technical achievement, I was really blown away by the editing. What Jennifer Lame is able to do in here really just touches on so much different ideologies and different moments throughout this, but never losing sense of where you are in the timeline or with these characters. Also along the likes, the editing is exquisite, but if we're looking at also a technical achievement, Hoyt Hoyatum, which I might be mispronouncing, I completely just butchered that. The cinematographer for this, phenomenal. And Ludwig Göransson, who I've been a really big fan of, his score is just perfectly interspliced. And I know a lot of people usually have issues with the sound mixing for Christopher Nolan movies. This is a movie that really feels like everything is just perfectly placed together. But also what's perfectly placed together in there is the fact that he develops a horror tone to this. This is not a horror movie per se, but there are a couple jump scares that really get you by certain things and visuals that Oppenheimer himself is looking at and seeing, and the prosthetics, the makeup, all things like that. Everything's through his vision for 90% of this film, like I mentioned. And the fact that you are in his shoes and really do feel like you are feeling every single emotion that he is going through is phenomenal. And the fact that it can keep you on edge the entire way through, even though us, people who have learned this through history, know the results, know what's going to happen, we're still on edge the entire way through. And I love that. I truly love that this film never actually deterred from Oppenheimer's point of view. It always went through his eyes and always focused in on that. And again, I I can't get enough about this film, but I'm also trying to do a really good job of not spoiling the movie, because there's certain sequences and certain things that he does in this film that are just so unique that you have to experience for yourself, which is one of the primary reasons that I've not talked about the bomb dropping, which is spectacular. There's no doubt about that. Like, the visual look of that, all that entire sequence, it's just as much as you would expect from everything that's been hyped up about it. This is a quiet, more somber, devastating Christopher Nolan movie that is not just all about the bomb dropping and the spectacle of that and what people would have thought about that. It is about Oppenheimer himself. It's about his life. That is why the ending of this movie might be personally my favorite ending of any Christopher Nolan movie, which is a lot to say because a lot of his endings are spectacular. But the ending in this one really gave me this haunting, devastating gut feeling that makes you look at what Oppenheimer, what America, what so many people had created and done, and what one bomb now triggered the events that we are now looking at and lasting today, years later. It's a brilliant final scene, and it's one that really will make everyone leave the theater thinking and discussing. This is a movie that many people will be discussing for a long time. And I am so happy that I got to experience it in IMAX. And I'm so much more happy that I got to experience it in film, 70mm film. I'm speechless. I truly am speechless about this film. I say this, I truly mean it. Oppenheimer is Nolan's crowning achievement as a director. A Hollywood classic that will be studied for years to come. It will remind the world of what one man's idea truly did to change it all. Murphy and Downey are my picks for the Oscars, and again, I cannot recommend you see this movie enough. Again, I've seen Barbie. I loved Barbie. Barbenheimer is an amazing double feature you can do, but Oppenheimer is truly a film for the ages, and I think honestly, I think it's going to go down as one of the best films ever made. And that's saying a lot because Nolan's filmography is some of the best films ever made, whether you look at Inception, Interstellar, The Dark Knight, of course. But this just seems very special, and it's very different, and we don't get films like this. I know I keep saying that, but I truly mean it. Go see Oppenheimer. It's a masterpiece. You'll absolutely enjoy it. So with all that said, I'm going to give this film an A+. I loved it. And again, maybe I'm a Christopher Nolan fanboy. Maybe you don't like Christopher Nolan. You might not like this movie. But hey, that's my thoughts. Thank you so much again for watching this. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, until next time, stay classy.